Hello, and thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Dominic Cummins, and I'm the co-founder of RightMind, as well as the Apex Agency Growth Mastermind and Show. So today what I want to talk a little bit about is something that was shared with me many years ago by a mentor of mine when he described basically how businesses work. Now, he used a triangle as an example, but I'm going to use something that I think we're all familiar with that really kind of helps exemplify exactly what is going on inside of a business, and particularly inside of your marketing agency. So when we think about a business, I often compare it to a Teeter Totter. So do you remember Teeter Totters as a kid, or the inner child in all of us still may get on them periodically? But a Teeter Totter was a playground toy where people would sit on each side of it and then kind of go back and forth. Now, if you got a guy like me who's a little on the bigger side, I could give the people across from me a little bit of a ride. But the point is that there was these two sides of things balancing back and forth, and in the middle of it was something that we call a fulcrum, of which that Teeter Totter balances. So let's talk a little bit about why I think that that has something to do with you as an agency owner, or even any business owner that might be watching this. So let's draw out, and forgive my artistic or lack of artistic skills, but let's draw out our Teeter Totter over here, okay? And so we have on one side of our Teeter Totter, we have our sales and our marketing efforts. Now on the other side of things, we have our widgets. That's supposed to be a box. That's all. As good as the artistic ability is going to get. Maybe I can draw like little lines of things, whatever. You get what I'm saying. It's the widget that you produce. Now think about that. What do I mean by a widget? Well, obviously if you were in a manufacturing business, this would be the sunglasses you make, or the shirts you make, the microphones, the camera equipment, things like that. It's pretty obvious. But if we were an accountant, it's the ability to do tax returns. It's the product that we offer, if you will. And not just the product itself, but our ability to deliver on that product. Then we come over here to our sales and marketing, which seems to be a little bit more obvious. These are our efforts to obviously sell our product. Now here's what's interesting for agency owners, as we oftentimes came out of a business ourselves. We were, like my example, I ran corporate marketing for a company, sales and marketing in my case, and came out of that in order to start my own consulting agency. What can happen is that we can think in our terms of, oh, we're actually over here in the sales and marketing efforts, but actually no, sales and marketing becomes our widget. It's the thing that we produce. So in my case, it's in RightMind, it was the consulting business to go out and help companies with their sales and marketing efforts. With the Apex, it's our mastermind. It's the events that we host. Those are our widgets, okay? Now, you bring in some expertise, though, as a marketer in the sales and marketing side of things, but what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis is really your production. So you still have to focus in on the sales and marketing efforts. Now, newer agencies have a tendency to suffer from a little bit of the whole the cobbler's children have no shoes kind of scenario. They get so wound up and working so much, so diligently on the ability to deliver on things over here that their sales and marketing efforts will start to go down. Now, as we see agencies mature and they get to that 7-figure mark, or maybe the $1 million mark, the $2 million mark, we see that they've typically started to figure out how to keep their lead flow going and how to produce a certain amount of sales. Okay, so that's setting the groundwork for what we're looking at with this Teeter Totter. Here's the thing, balance is everything in this regard. Obviously, if you get over here and you have more products that you can sell, you kind of throw your Teeter Totter off, right? All of a sudden, you have more products, more things that you can do than the ability to go over here and make sales. You're not really doing it that well over in this area, right? So that's one problem. What does that look like? Well, you as an agency may have a situation where you're underwater every single month. Why are you underwater? What do you look at? And by underwater, I mean you're in the negative, right? Every month you have to hit a certain dollar figure in order to even to kind of keep the doors open, if you will. Well, that is likely because what happened over here is you structured something up so that you could take on more client work. Maybe you got a larger client and suddenly you had to bring on a new project manager. You had to bring on a new digital marketing specialist, a new SEO person, whatever the case might be. You brought somebody in to be able to take this on. Now, if you kept that client, great, or if you lost that client, suddenly you're in a situation where you can actually do more of your widget than you have the ability to sell, or at least that you are selling. Now, the opposite can be true, is sometimes we can start to sell so well, and sometimes this is perceived as a good issue, that we sell so well that over here, we'll go back to our box example, because that's all I can draw, but we're over here selling a whole ton of things, but we're not able to actually deliver on it. And this becomes a delivery issue. This becomes an implementation issue. Now, businesses, I'll see people say like, well, this is actually kind of a good problem to have. Actually, long term, it's not. In the short term, you might be bringing in a whole bunch of money. But long term, what your stress is going to be is that you're not delivering well, and you can have reputational damage. You're not delivering the results your clients are looking for. You can't keep up on the clients, whatever the case might be. So that's not really a good thing to have here. Now, you may be watching this video and going like, yep, makes perfect sense. I totally get that. We totally have it wired. Well, most businesses struggle with this at some level. You're typically seeing over here good cash flow, but not good results. You're seeing over here, if this is off kilter over this side of the things, is that you're typically having, you're usually having cash flow issues, would be one good sign of this. There's a variety of other things that could be happening over here, but here's the one that's really tough about this, is that letting people go. And I know this from my own example. We've had times where we've brought on staff to handle clients, extra copywriters, extra people to work on things to be able to handle client load. And then when that client project is over, they decide not to renew with us, whatever the case might be, you've started to develop a relationship with somebody and you're like, oh, I don't want to let him go. So you're trying to find more work to be able to offset that. Gets yourself into a really challenging situation. So this could be a real tough place to be. Over here is a tough place to be, particularly when you're a newer agency, because you're trying to get that cash flow in the door. You're really trying to bring things up, and you can suffer a little bit if you're not there. So, but here's the thing that we have a tendency as business owners to forget about. Think about a Teeter Totter. What does everything on a Teeter Totter revolve around? It actually revolves around the fulcrum in the middle. This part right here. Well, what is that for a business? It's you. If chances are, if you're watching this, you're an agency owner, a business owner. Now, if you're not, then you might be the exception. But many of you are owners or at least leaders within your company. And this is really your executive team, right? Now, this is an interesting thing for me. And don't take this the wrong way, because I apply it to myself as well. In the state of California, we have to have, if we have a corporate structure like our company does, you have to appoint a CEO. So I appointed myself the CEO. Now, if I were to walk over to a Fortune 500 company and apply for the CEO job just because I happen to hold the title CEO right now, they'd likely laugh me out of the building. I'd like to think maybe I have a shot, but let's face the reality of that. CEOs who come up, executives who come up through companies, go through a lot of training and a lot of situations to be able to earn that right to hold that title. We as business owners can give ourselves this whole CEO title just because we decided that's what we're going to call ourselves, or we're going to be the founder or the partner or whatever the case might be. We get to set our titles, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the training just comes along with it, right? So what are the things that go into here? Well, the primary overarching job of an executive is to make sure that these things are balanced. Because what oftentimes agencies think is when they're trying to scale, they scale over here. And they don't think so much about over here. Well, if I sell it, I'll figure it out over here, right? If I get them to say yes and I get the money in the door, I'll sort it out over here. That's pretty common to hear. Now, some agencies take the contrarian approach to that and actually staff up a little bit on this side, make sure that they have all the assets that they need in order to generate, to be able to support whatever type of business that they do. But the reality is that the way to scale a business is actually to lift from the center. So if you actually want to get your business up here, that's your new Teeter Totter, which means this had to have raised up in order to create that. You tracking with me so far, right? So this executive level thing here is really what the key is. And so as a marketer, for instance, it's a really easy entry point because most companies think that this is their problem. Think about it for a second. How many times do you meet with a company and they go, well, if we could just get more leads, we would be just fine. Well, they're talking about this side of the Teeter Totter. If they say, if we could just close more sales, it's this side of the Teeter Totter. Now, there are certainly consultants that handle this type of operational delivery over here, but we oftentimes see, which is good for all of us, it's been very good for me for my business, it's I'm sure very good for you as a marketer, you see that they think that's the real problem in the business. But how many times have you come into that business to find out that either this is the problem over here, as in the product's not very good, or really, these folks have no clue? I imagine we've all seen it many times. Well, that's the thing is turn the mirror on yourself. And I'm not suggesting you're a bad leader or a bad executive of any sort, but we do have to look at this with an honest appraisal, because that's really going to tell us about the health of our business. Because a really good executive here knows how to keep this balance going. You may know that you have to ramp up sales and take a little bit of a hit here, but you also know that if you get to a point where you have over ability to deliver, you have to cut staff. You have to cut costs. This is where that sort of, we hear the term ruthless side of being an executive comes in, as people have to downsize, right? If you look at the Fortune 500 companies, things like that, they go to a quarterly earnings report and they sit and their investors tell them whether or not they have to offload an entire division of their company. Why are they doing that? Well, because the idea here is to keep balance. It's to keep this teeter-totter of business balanced, and that all relies on the executive team. And then that's all the other stuff that you have to figure out, right? You're over here trying to think, well, I got to generate more leads and I'm going to get that done. Great. Well, that's nice. Well, I got to hire a new graphic designer over here to support this thing. Okay, that sounds really good. But mind you, in the middle of this is your lease agreements, your contracts, your picking out the office color paint, what type of whiteboard are you going to have, payroll, managing HR issues. There's all the abundance of things that go on with an executive. So what do we often see? Executives will take themselves to one side or the other of this depending on where their comfort level is. So as an agency owner, we'll see folks tend to get into the nitty-gritty details of client work. They get in on the operational side of things, and they lean towards that because it's something that they enjoy, and they almost avoid their job as the executive at all costs. Now, they think they're over here acting like an executive because they're out there making these really great decisions, but they're not. They're actually contributing to the imbalance of your teeter-totter. The other side is true. You've heard me potentially talk about founder selling syndrome in the past, where a founder jumps over to the sales side and then all sales have to come through one of your founders, one of the partners in the group. That's actually a solution that we sometimes see is instead of address this as an executive, they'll find a partner over here that can handle the operational elements and a partner over here that helps the sales. But really what you need in the middle is a cohesive executive team, not people working to try to balance it over there. Actually, when we see this sort of thing, it is indicative of the fact that the middle is not really addressed. It's not to say you can't have partners. I have a business partner. You've seen Doug in the group. I have a business partner. I have a tendency to be a little bit heavier weighted over here, and he has a tendency to be a little weighted over here. But what we do share is a common experience of being executives at large companies, so we understand how all of this has to fit in to balance your organization. So, as an agency owner, I would encourage you to really look at this aspect of your business as much as you're looking at these things. Chances are, I don't have to tell you to look at both of your sales and your operational elements. You're doing that right now. But what we do see is that this part of the business is often taken out of it. This is the difficult stuff. This is sort of, as one of our mastermind members called it, the real business stuff. She didn't say stuff, but you get what I'm saying, right? This is the real business aspects of running your agency. So the reality is if you truly want to scale an agency, you don't scale in these aspects, you scale right here in the center of the teeter-totter.